Hello, hello. This is Summer Lowry. I am on fire for change. And buckle up, bitches, because we're going for a ride. Oh, Lord. It's been an interesting week. And the things that have unfolded in the last week have been just some incredible spiritual lessons for me. And I have to share. Like, I literally have to share these things. I feel like I'm finally getting things that I've probably been trying to learn for a good, 30 years or whatever. However long, back from whenever my original programming, when I started taking on the original programming. So I guess that would be about 40 years, because I'm about to be 45, and I'm pretty sure, by about 5 years old, I was like totally becoming programmed by everything around me. But that's another story for another day. So let me share what has happened in the last week, because I'm on my way to work. So last Tuesday, well, I've had this shoulder stuff going on, just like serious tightness in my shoulder. I think it was some sort of repetitive use injury, but I've it's been in pain. It's been like my range of motion is shot, like all of these things. And so I've been having it worked on by this just really amazing massage therapist. And she worked on my shoulder for an hour last Tuesday. And while she was working on my shoulder, I even said to her at one point, I was like, God, I was like, this is so intense. I was like, I feel like I need to have a good cry. Because when you've been when you're injured and then you're like, your natural tendency, or at least my natural tendency, is to, tighten up other areas to try to protect the injury that I have, because I don't want to get hurt. If I get jarred, like, it's going to be painful, like all that stuff, right? And so you just start to tense up all around that injury, and then you're basically like, you're not just healing the injury, like you've got to heal all the stress that's built up around the injury, right? Which is like, metaphor for life. Anyway, so I said to her, I was like, I feel like I need to have a good cry. And then Tuesday night, I had my Inner Sangha group with David K. Richards and Stacy Lewanski, and you can look up what Inner Sangha is, but anyway, I'll put the link in the description so you can check that out. But we had a good discussion on Tuesday and a meditation, and it was kind of like, what is coming up for you this week? What are you being called to this week or whatever? And what was coming up was like de-stressing my mind. And that was like kind of the thing that really resonated, was like, I want to de-stress my mind. And so, careful what you wish for. If you pray for patience, you'll get lots of opportunities to wait. If you say, I want to de-stress my mind, at least this is what happened to me. I want to de-stress my mind. Like, you're going to end up having very stressful situations that you then have to work through. And so that was, kind of what happened for me. The other thing that happened was I was talking to an old friend, and, she's also like on a spiritual journey right now. And we were talking about managing triggers, and I was like, yeah, it's so interesting, because as I've gotten better at managing my triggers, I've noticed like some of them are really dissolving. And so then, of course, my major, like the biggest trigger for me in life, came up. And now that I'm saying that, I'm like, wait, is there a bigger one? Because if I say this, like, the really, really big one's going to come up. It's right around the corner. But I think this is, probably one of the biggest, and it's like just a trigger that relates to a childhood trauma of, we lost our home as a kid, and there was just a lot of confusion. I didn't know what was going on. Nobody was communicating with me. And I found myself, as an adult at 44 years old, like in a very, very similar situation with a lot of the same feelings coming up as I've been living in the same place for a couple of years, and all of a sudden, the landlord like showed up one day, and I know people are like, that's totally illegal. Yeah, I'm sure it is, but what are you going to do? What's the recourse really? Right. And so he shows up and starts like, they came early one morning and cut down the tree in the backyard. They like tore down some other like old sheds that were in the backyard, and just basically were like prepping to build like 2 more units right in the backyard of this property where I live, meaning there would be no backyard. And then, and I just felt, I was like feeling all of this trauma coming back of like that feeling of I'm looking out the window, nobody's cluing me in, I have no idea what's going on, I feel scared, like all of the feelings that I was having as a child at, I think I was 6 or 7 years old when that happened, like everything was coming back. And so I worked through that. I think it was sometime in the fall, but I was laid up for a few days. I was like curled up, like, like in a ball, just needing to take care of myself. And, so this week, after, kind of putting out there that I wanted to de-stress my mind. And of course, like last Saturday, my Mother's Day gift to myself, I was like, well, they made a big mess in the yard when they did all of that work, and I'm going to make it look pretty again, because I have no idea when they're coming back. And as long as we're here, I'm going to make it look nice. And so that was, less than a week. And then, so that was Saturday. And then Tuesday was like, oh, I'm going to, de-stress my mind. And then I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I got wind that a friend was going to be moving out of her place, and it's a 2-bedroom. And I was like, oh, have they listed it yet? Because it's really hard to find places in Sacramento right now. Everything's getting very expensive, and it's very competitive. A lot of people moving in from the Bay Area, things like that. And so, so I reached out to the landlord. I was like, oh my gosh, like this could be perfect. This is the universe showing up for me and making it so easy for me to move out of this apartment and into this other space. Well, then I start going through the process of applying for this space, and they want you to make 3 times the rent, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because the median household income in Sacramento like isn't even equivalent to like 3 times the rent of this 2-bedroom house. So I don't know how that's like, how is that working? But anyway, there was just all of these barriers. And like, as the week was going on, I was getting more and more stressed out, because I was realizing, I'm like, this isn't going to happen. Like, I feel like this door is closing, and my natural tendency, because of all of the, defense mechanisms that I developed growing up, my natural tendency is like, figure it out, stick your foot in the door, like find a way or make one. Like, that has been the mentality. And I think in a lot of ways, that's served me in my life. Like, I'm a survivor. People would say like, oh, you're so determined, like all this stuff. Right. But I'll get to that, but this is a big lesson. And I, was starting to like lightweight panic by Friday, because on Thursday, my landlord had called me and said, oh, they're coming tomorrow to start like digging in the backyard to start putting in these units or whatever, which at that point, like, I had asked for more details. Nobody's telling me anything. And so I'm like, okay, I wanted to de-stress my mind. And now, you know, all of these, like this worst fear, this like worst childhood trauma, you know, is like rising back up. Right. And what I know logically is that when things are rising up again, it's just a sign that like more love is needed, more healing is needed, and they're really like rising up to be cleared. What I didn't realize was that my pattern of implementing my defense mechanisms the moment that it looks like things aren't going to go my way, implementing those defense mechanisms has actually been blocking me from like clearing what needs to be cleared, which is, you know, which is like, whoa. I knew, because I back in the fall, I heard something that said, it's your time to receive. And I started thinking about all the ways that I'm blocking my own receiving. And I started to become very aware that, okay, I'm blocking my own receiving, like how and why, and wanting to not keep doing that, right? And so it was so interesting that I, you know, was going through this on Friday, and all of this stuff is coming up, and I'm feeling myself starting to go back to that pattern of grasping for control. And so I texted another friend. I'm like, hey, like, we got to get out of our place. Do you, like, because I knew they had a rental property. So I was like, is your place available? She was like, no, it isn't, but we might be moving out of our other house, and, you know, maybe you could rent that. And so I was like, ooh, okay, possibilities, right? So I start, you know, but, oh, you need a roommate if I live there because it's too big, it's too expensive. So I start, you know, like putting things in the works, like who could I get to be a roommate? Like how can I, you know, going into figure it out, make it work, you know, all of this stuff, right? But there was a part of me that was like, the location of it, I was like, it's not where we want to be. It's not the right place. Like part of me knew it wasn't right, but my fear and my, you know, my need to control was going into, well, I can make it work. Like I can make it work. And then, yeah. And then I got a little emotional. I had a little bit of a cry because I was like in the car with my son, and I was just like, I'm feeling so frustrated about, you know, where we're at, and just feeling like I don't have control of the situation, like all of these things. And so I'm like, okay, just let it go, like de-stress your mind. And I chatted with David a bit, and he reminded me, he was like, okay, well, you have clarity on the fact that it's time for you to go. Like it's time for you to move. And, you know, don't fixate on, you know, this one house, this one thing. And I'm like, right. He's like, remember, there's infinite possibilities. I'm like, right. So go home. In the effort to de-stress my mind, my son and I decide to have a double feature movie night. And so we watch some comedy, can't remember what, start watching another one. It's really funny. And the movie's almost ending. And my son does this thing where he, you know, he's like, he's pushing my buttons and he knows it. And he will blow in my face. Like he just goes, whew. And it's so annoying. And so we're like lying in bed with the laptop watching this movie, and I farted. Okay. Like I'm full transparency, like whatever. It's my car cast. I farted. Okay. It's a normal human function. And my son is like, Mom, you farted. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, you know? And then he blew in my face. Like right after that, he blew right in my face. And and I was so annoyed, and I was like, damn it. And I pushed his head away, like not hard, but you know, like when you're like get out of here. So then he pushed my head, which jarred my neck and my shoulder, which triggered, you know, like pain, right? Because I was relaxed. I wasn't in that protection mode. And when he did that, I just I started sobbing, just sobbing uncontrollably. He, of course, felt terrible. And he went to bed. I was like, no more movie. Like, we're done. And I sobbed probably for an hour. The interesting thing was I was aware. I was like, I was not getting in the story and reinforcing suffering with the figuring it out. I had kind of let that go. And I was like observing myself sobbing. And I was like reminding myself, like, this is the release you've needed. Like, you needed to get this, like, this is part of the de-stressing process. So as I'm sobbing, I'm like telling myself this. And rather than calling on my defenses, because again, like normally in this state, I want to avoid this kind of discomfort, right? We go through life literally trying to avoid this kind of discomfort. And I didn't go to my usual defenses. I didn't gather my tribe of my micromanager, my big sister, like these inner, what I call my inner Sangha. Like I didn't gather those beings to because they're the ones who are like, control everything, figure it out. And yes, again, they serve their purpose, but I didn't call on those beings. I literally called on my dead relatives and I called on my spiritual counsel, because if you're on a spiritual journey, like a deep spiritual journey, you've probably had some beings. They could be archetypes, they could be ancestors, they could be aspects of your personality, like who knows, right? They show up. They show up on your journey. So like there's kind of this, well, I'm not going to share who my spiritual tribe is right now. I'm just getting like this, don't talk about us in specifics. So, but I called on that spiritual counsel. And I just, even as I was sobbing, like I envisioned them sitting around like a fire and just holding space, like holding space for me to have this cry, to have this release. And then I went to sleep. The next morning, I was supposed to go for a hike, and a dinner with some dear friends, and then a couple of people who are, friends of these friends who I don't really know that well. Well, of course, in the morning, I'm incredibly raw. I'm exhausted. Maybe I shouldn't go. Like, maybe I should just stay home. No. You've been looking forward to this. You're going for this great hike in Tilden Park in Berkeley. Like, it's going to be beautiful. You need this nurturing. Like, it's going to feel deeply nurturing to spend time with these women, spend time in nature. You've been looking forward to this. Plus, you volunteered to drive. So you're going. And get in the car. We're chatting. It's my friend Julie and her friend Katie, who was, who I don't know that well, but I'm getting to know. And Julie's asking me like, oh, what happened with the house? And I start sharing about the income and, all this and that. And Katie, who's in the back seat, is like, well, what's your budget? And I was like, well, this is the going rate right now. And so, this is, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm kind of prepared to pay. Katie lives in the most beautiful little space in downtown Sacramento. And it's a co-housing community, which I've always been curious about, but you don't really rent in a co-housing community, you buy. And it just so happened that one of the gentlemen there is deciding that he wants to rent out his place for a year And, you know, he's transitioning out of the community, but he's going to want to see how he feels about it. She's like, yeah, there's a place opening. And I was like, oh my God, text him, like text him now. Like, yes, I want to see it. Next day, saw the place. Next day, went to the community dinner. Like, everything is just falling into place. And I knew, like, there was a part of me that was like, what I was saying, because also on my spiritual journey, when I've met my spiritual guides and I've talked to my higher self, and she has literally told me that you are wired for ease, like grace and ease. And I've been my whole life going, no. Things happen because I make them happen. And when I finally, when things were not going right with the first house that showed up, I was literally starting to tell myself, no, like, it's supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be easy. And so I'm like, well, maybe it's me. I just need to let go. I just need to, like, it's fine. It's all going to come together some way, somehow. But I was still mentally sort of fixated on, it's going to come together for this house, because the initial awareness that place was even opening up became very easy. And I was like, oh, there's a friend, she can refer me, blah, blah, blah. And as I was going through that experience, I was trying to stick my foot in the door and hold the door open and not let it close. And so what I want to say to you is, if you are wired for ease, maybe you are, maybe all of us are. I know I am. And get your foot out of the frickin' door. Let the frickin' door close. If the door is trying to close, let the door close. Because something is on the other side. There are so many times I can look back on my journey and I go, wow, like, I stuck my foot in the door. I made that happen. I never got a chance to see what would have been behind door number 2 or door number 3, because I was so fixated on the one door. Okay. We are living in a world, in a universe of infinite freaking doors. Okay. Infinite doors. And the door that is for you has a freaking doorman. And when you show up, he goes, oh, there you are. We've been waiting for you. And he opens the door and he puts out his hand and you walk in. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful and I'm so excited that I finally have learned this so valuable lesson. Because now I know there are other doors. There are other doors that are for me. And it's like, now I have the passcode. Oh, if you try to open a door and it's not opening like super easy, it ain't your door. And that's for me. That's my journey. I don't know what journey you're on. Maybe your journey is, you're supposed to be kicking doors in. Like that's your spiritual lesson, is that all these closed doors, your spiritual lesson is get comfortable kicking those doors in, because what's in there is for you. That might be your spiritual lesson. I don't know. I'm just sharing about my spiritual lesson, because as I have said, my liberation is within me and all around me, and your liberation is within you. Sorry, this got a little long today. I drove to work and then I had to sit in my car and I had to finish this because I literally had to get this out of my heart and out of my everything. I love you, and do what you got to do. If you got to kick down doors, kick them down. If you got to let doors open, let them open. If you got to let doors close, let them close. Be available. Be willing to go through whatever discomfort you need to go through to learn your spiritual lesson. Because on the other side of that is frickin' freedom.